Hello and welcome to episode 12 of this Inspire 2020 Visionary Leader series. I'm delighted to be joined today by Charley Stoney, who is CEO of the Institute of Advertising Practitioners in Ireland. Charley, how are you?
Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast or your YouTube link.
It's going to be, well, it's on YouTube, but it's actually going to be going out as a podcast as well. So it's great to see you here. And I've got to know you through some of the work I do for brand finance. It's one of the number of hats I wear. And so maybe just give the audience a bit of an overview as to you and your career. I know you reference on LinkedIn that you've been immersed in the marketing and advertising industry for 25 years. So similar kind of period to me. And you must have seen so many things come and go, but maybe just a bit about you and your background and how you got to IAPI.
Yes, thank you, Simon. So I suppose growing up, I would have had a more sort of creative side to me through family influence, really. I mean, despite the dodgy accent, I'm Irish and I grew up in the west of Ireland, and my family are, I suppose, a group of intellectuals and artists, really. So I think I got into the industry from a creative perspective, but actually worked out that my natural bossiness put me in a leadership position. So I ended up really in client services, and I suppose the science of marketing and the science of advertising really drew me. And I got bitten by the bug in my mid-20s, and I haven't stopped. So I've worked both in the UK and Ireland for agencies, on the client side, both for a consumer electronics business in Yorkshire, and as well as Yorkshire Bank. At one point, I was managing their product portfolio or their card portfolio. And then I came back to Ireland in 2003 as the Celtic Tiger was roaring away, and I took on the below the line aspects of what was then McConnell's advertising. So merged the sort of PR, the promotions side of the business, the direct marketing, and what was then known as multimedia into something called McConnell's Fusion. And I then actually, coincidentally, I'd love to say it was strategically planned, but actually I ended up then becoming managing director and leading a field marketing, field management business as the recession hit, which was superb, really, because we were running huge sales teams, both on a sort of door-to-door basis and within the FMCG market, replacing reps on the road. And everybody needed great salespeople at that time. So it couldn't have been a better move for my career. So I spent 6.5 years there. And I then moved back into the marketing field to head up Alternatives, which is Ireland's sort of premier marketing recruitment and consulting firm. I mean, really, they specialize in marketing talent, whether it's freelance, whether it's a marketing consultant, or whether it's a permanent role. And then this job came up, and I suppose IAPI had started life, a lot of the advertising associations had started life as being a little bit of a gentleman's club, really, to support the advertising industry. And we're talking some time ago. My predecessor had been extraordinary in building up IAPI into what is now a very professional organization with nearly 60 members across the whole of the advertising and creative spectrum in Ireland. Agency members, that is, we are a business membership group, not an individual membership group. And we are now the voice of what we call the commercial creativity and communications industry in Ireland. Our members span the biggest advertising groups here and the biggest media groups to smaller agencies, creative agencies, branding agencies, experiential agencies, and now some PR firms, of course, who are moving into creativity through social media, etc. And it is, and I've said it since I joined in June 2018, it is a dream job for me. I think the combination of having been on the client side, then having worked very closely with marketeers on their careers and knowing what they want and what they want from their team and what they want from their agencies has been hugely beneficial. And I guess what was very, very close to my heart when I met the board, I suppose, prior to my appointment, was that they really bought into my strategic vision for the industry, to be perceived as a viable and hugely vital part of the future growth of Ireland. So the advertising and media industry being seen as a fundamental engine of growth for businesses here.
Yeah, and so, well, that's a great introduction. And you mentioned your bossy nature. I would actually call it extremely professional, because I attended the event that you held and David Haigh from Brand Finance came to at the Google Foundry back in August, I think. And I actually think that was, in my 3.5 years back from Australia, the most professionally run event I've been to. So you're clearly running a really good ship there. And
well, I mean, I really can't take all the credit for that. I have a superb team. We had some great speakers, including David, obviously, and wonderful cooperation and collaboration. Google themselves gave us the Foundry, the Institute of Directors. We did it. It was a joint event with the Institute of Directors. And to be honest, what I have found in the last 2 years is that I really have a growth to collaborate. I think we're too small a country for us all the trade associations to work in silos. And in a way, I would love to do what IBEC have done for the, I suppose, the more commercial industries. I would love to do for the creative industries and the marketing industries in terms of that huge collaboration and thinking big, and not feeling that the people are stepping on their toes, rather than help and promote. And we have a series of what we call collaborators from, ICAD here, the creative individual membership business, the Marketing Institute here, the Advertising Association here, and I'm on the board of the Advertising Standards Authority of Ireland. I'm also on the board of CopyClear, which clears the alcohol brands creative before it goes on air. And I feel that we are a really collegial bunch. And what's happened in COVID is that it's become even more apparent that we all want to club together, that we all want to do things for the good of the industry. Because now is the time for brand building more than any other time, and reinventing, pivoting, all those kind of, buzzwords that are going on at the moment. We've been doing this for years. Agility is in our soul, really, as an industry, because we've always had to. If you are heading up a big account, such as the big Irish accounts here, Electric Ireland or Irish Rail or SuperValu or Tesco or the big banks, they are asking you every quarter, so what now? What now? What are we going to do differently? How can we do this? How can we promote that? How can we, and you are having to come up with the answers. And they're providing you with the insight, and they're working with you, but the agencies are the ones that have to, I suppose, respond. And now we are responding better than ever.
Absolutely. So in terms of the industry itself, so I say again, I represent Brand Finance over here in Ireland. And, I keep talking about this three-legged stool challenge, right? Which you may or may not agree with, but all companies need to, during this period, need to be, number one, the first leg, they need to be very mindful of their spend and their efficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. That's common sense. Number two, and this plays directly into the work your organization does, they need to be mindful of their campaigns and their communications, given number one, but also number three, the third leg, they also need to be mindful of the future, right? You can't just be hung up on efficiency and saving the day to day. You always need to be looking to be a bridge to the future. How are companies doing in Ireland in that perspective? Are certain industry sectors balancing that better than others, or what are you seeing in the market?
Well, I think the essence is that you have to be relevant and authentic. And I suppose that's come to the fore now because of COVID, but actually it's true of any time, So you have to engage with your consumer. So on the first point you said about cutting spend and
Efficiency.
It is so easy for the CFO of an organization to look at the cost structure of their organization,
Yeah.
and just grab from the A&P or the marketing budget, because it hasn't been spent yet, and so therefore it's an easy win. But, and dare I say this, I think that's it's too easy, and it's sort of lazy accounting in a way, because what you're not doing is you're not laying down the foundation blocks for the future, as you said. So yes, some cutbacks are necessary, and I think we'd all accept that, because if your consumers aren't buying, then you can't keep spending. But at the same time, if you lose your voice totally in this period, it's 10 times more difficult, and therefore you have to spend much more to get your share of voice back up again.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's the fundamental, is that you have to balance all your cost savings. So, I think one of the things that will provide cost savings for the future for big businesses will be office space. So if you think about planning for the future and you're looking at cost savings in terms of your big building, and your shop front, maybe that's where the savings are, and instead of just pulling from budgets that haven't yet been spent. That's my kind of little piece on that. I guess then, in terms of what brands are doing here and what brands are doing well, there are some industries that are really finding it easy to be authentic and relevant, such as the grocery industry. And they are playing a blinder, because what they're showing you and the emotional resonance that they're showing you. Super Value launched a campaign only at the end of last week with TBWA. What they're showing you is people doing normal everyday things in a really authentic way, and they're talking about how they can get to your home. And then when you go to the store and you see the 2-meter distinctions and all the COVID signs and people wearing masks and the helpfulness of their staff, it's all very relevant and authentic. So I think that goes without saying. That industry. Say now you take the banking industry, which everybody loves to hate. They've been hit because if you think about the timing of, I'm sorry about that noise.
It's the cat.
There is a puppy in the background playing with a plastic bag.
That's fine.
So,
that's fine.
Is that okay? Is that too distracting?
No, that's fine. We can't hear it. That's fine.
Anyway, if you think about the banking sector, at this time of year, when COVID hit in March, April time, end of March, early April will be when they will be starting their big mortgage campaigns. Then you think to what actually happened. The last thing consumers wanted to hear about was mortgage lending rates.
Absolutely.
So a lot of them had to kind of turn on their head. I mean, we had Bank of Ireland on a super webinar we ran last week, and they had to pivot. I know AIB had to do the same, and I'm sure it's the same for other banks. So they are finding it much more difficult. Thankfully we haven't seen. I think some of the UK banks, and I know some of the American banks, have come up with, we're here to help you with Zoom photos all over the screen. Well, is that authentic? Is that relevant? Is that a little bit copycat? I'm not sure. So I think we've been a little bit more creative than that over here in our advertising. So I think that goes without saying. I think it's difficult for consumer goods. Again, we had the country manager for Mars talking about his experience, Owen Crawford, the other day. And of course, food service has been so badly hit that they've had to completely pivot what they're doing in that space. And you would think a company like Mars, dry grocery, impulse, they're doing all right, but the impulse sector is down. Because people aren't popping out as they used to. So, and you haven't got the passes, the passing trade. So it's funny, the nuances and how people are doing relate entirely to what they're doing. However, if you look, for example, at what Vodafone have done and the terrific campaign in Ireland that they've been running with JWT folk, it is a superb example of how to communicate and produce an ad that resonates and is using the tools that Vodafone provide. You know, I mean, it's easy enough, I suppose, in a way, because they are in communication. And what are we about now? We're about remote communication. And I then would also say that some of our public sector bodies are doing incredibly well. I mean, obviously, you've got the government, the HSE and the government themselves and all the communications they're doing, and they're spending, and they're really propping up the Indigenous Irish media, which is so important. So important to maintain the integrity of our Indigenous Irish media. We are known for our authentic journalism here, you know, from the Irish Times to the Irish Indo to the Sunday Business Post to all the other papers. And then RTE are playing a blinder. So I think we can do hats off to them, and hopefully, you know, our industry is supporting them as best we can. And I'd also like to showcase I'd also like to mention certainly what On Post are doing. You know, Debbie Byrne, who's the managing director of On Post, and David Redmond, the CEO, and their terrific marketing team. I mean, again, it's actually a JWT folk you know, work, but they are doing such good work with the sort of social branding and being seen as a savior brand to a certain extent. And to be honest, it doesn't need much polish beyond the essence of the message that they're helping. The postmen are checking in on elderly people. That doesn't need advertising necessarily. It needs just highlighting. So, you know, I think the balance is there. But, you know, we had Johnny Cahill on the phone from the States the other day. He's the chief marketing officer of Heineken for America. And he is obviously of Irish, you know, he's Irish and he's well known here as a great marketeer. But, you know, he talked about how they're struggling, you know, with the on-trade hugely, obviously. And then you think, well, actually, maybe, you know, alcohol sales through e-commerce, but then you've got all the issues in the States with alcohol not crossing state lines. So there's all sorts of logistical things that you wouldn't have even thought of when you start out on this journey.
So have you in your career seen such I call this a circuit breaker period. So I think this is the first time that all 7 billion people on the planet won't forget this time. Like, nobody will forget 2020. It's been a real circuit breaker. Have you, from an advertising marketing perspective and the impact it has on uncertainty or accelerating trends or changing trends, have you ever seen such an intense period in your career?
No, and I don't think anyone has.
No.
But what's interesting, I mean, we did a survey with our leaders. I mean, there's so much to be positive about, you know. There's a sort of period of, we've got to get through this. There's a huge amount of uncertainty. It feels toxic, you know, all of those things. I've always been a glass half full person.
Yeah, me too.
And you know, I look to the future and I'm feeling so positive and optimistic. I feel that the industry can and will bounce. We will always need a very strong marketing and advertising industry. Even if the rampant consumerism that we've been experiencing isn't quite at the same level. And when I talk about that, I mean society sentiment, the throwaway society. You know, I feel that there's probably going to be a bit of a backlash. But having said that, doesn't that create a better world where, you know, real authenticity shines through and real creativity shines through? If you look at where the survey, what our survey highlighted from our leaders, you know, 2/3 of them said that it's actually pretty much as easy to produce creative work. I mean, okay, maybe the timelines are a bit lagged, but it is. I mean, creativity is creativity is creativity. It doesn't matter whether you're stuck in a dark hole or you're sitting in a lovely conservatory, or, you know, and in a way, I suppose, like the sort of Van Gogh analogy, you know, creativity kind of comes to the fore when you're in dark times, you know.
No,
So I think that's very strong. I think the other thing that's really good is that if you look at over 90% of agency leaders said that there's going to be fundamental changes to the industry, and that actually a lot of them are very positive. So they talk about remote working, enabling a talent pool that has hitherto been completely excluded from our industry.
Yeah.
One, because possibly they live abroad and don't get the kind of permits to come and work here, or more importantly, and from a domestic point of view, from rural Ireland workers who can't afford Dublin rents.
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely.
So I think that's going to be a hugely positive piece. I think the fact that 6 out of 10 agencies have won new business during COVID, and that 90% are actively engaged in pitches, means that it's still happening.
Yeah.
Over half feel that the industry is going to be improved with new technology capabilities.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing that I suppose would be seen as something that we're talking about now is the ease of communication.
Yeah.
So, Simon, while you and I can chat like this on Zoom, what we don't have is the little preamble of, and tell me about your weekend, and oh, did you notice that? Or those chance remarks as you're seeing someone to the car park, or you're making them a cup of coffee, or you're generally chit-chatting. You know, it isn't quite the same.
No.
So that feeling and that personal connection, although people are saying it's got stronger in the immediacy of it, but is it going to wane? Who knows? I hope not.
Yeah.
And then you've got that kind of fascinating thing around the social aspect of what we do. Whilst there's absolutely no liquid lunches anymore, there's no doubt that there is still the evening Friday night pints, the whole thing of going out for dinner, the entertainment piece, you find that you've got similar tastes in music as your client or your agency or your colleague, and you go out to concerts or what have you. That's not there.
Yeah.
So, there are things that we need to work around.
No, I agree. It's interesting because I wrote an article for Irish Tech News a couple of weeks ago about the confluence or otherwise of human collaboration. So human collaboration is born of social context, as you said, right? But also collaborative tools, technology. And is there a dichotomy with that, or can they dovetail together? And there is no answer to it. Nobody knows the answer. No. But it's interesting that some people say that. I've spoken to people like Ted Rubin on this series, who's the CMO of Fotify in Florida, and people like Eduardo Braceno in Florida, who is co-founder of Growth Mindset, and they say in mindset growth, and they say to an extent it's easier to get more direct messages when you're face to face like this, but don't forget that. Collaborative tools are great. Technology is great, but it was all actually developed when human beings were in a room together, right? Zoom and Skype was developed in a social context. So I think there's only so far as we can go. There's only a certain limit we can go with this technology stuff. I do think we are going to have to get back together again. But as you said, I think Gartner published a report. They think that remote working is going to go up from 30 to 48%. But is it? Who really knows this stuff? Nobody really knows.
Well, I think it's certainly going to go up, and I think the certainly in our industry, what has happened is we've proved it can work. Yeah. And I think that was what people were waiting for. Yeah. I myself the only reason I went to the office every single day, 5 days a week, is for my team, because I knew I could work perfectly well away from the office, but I wanted to be there to support my team. Yeah. So now I know I will only go back maybe 3 days a week. I mean, it'll be flexible. I'll go in after, because I'm an hour's commute. Yeah. So why would I go back to doing that 5 days a week?
Exactly.
But going back to the industry, I mean, I think I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, talking of Zoom meetings and events, I mean, we have event companies, and experiential companies like Honey and Buzz, like Verve, like Pluto, who are members, and they are doing some really, really clever things to help themselves stay relevant, and create, online amazing backdrops and enhance the technology even more so that you can make it look like you're in a room together and all of those sort of things. So I think that is good. And we ourselves, we're about to throw the first IAPI house party for members, where we're going to use Zoom rooms like the kitchen, behind the bike shed, the sitting room,
Yeah, I think that, World War II and the space race, and people are saying this, are going to be, with hindsight, the 3 periods of acceleration of technology and collaborative tools. And it was really interesting what you said. We'll wrap up in a few minutes, but you were talking about, maybe this will be a period that actually fine tunes people's appreciation of the importance of brand and reputation. And I think there's something definitely in that. So, I always talk about all businesses are governed by 3 R's: revenue, risk, and reputation, right? There is nothing else. It's revenue, risk, and reputation. And reputation broadly is brand. And I think kind of what you said was that because a lot of the fluff, for want of a much more subtle word, has kind of gone out, right? And overspending and a lot of that has gone out for the time being. The people are now seeing the bare bones, and those companies who manage their reputation well, I think their brand and their reputation through marketing and advertising, I think could really accelerate. So I think ironically, that reputation limb of risk, revenue, reputation could actually be perceived as being even more important. That doesn't mean all CFOs will see it that way, but I do think it could. And
well, it is. And I mean, Edelman shared with us their great insights, along with MCCP, actually, who are another member. And Edelman's rep track is superb, because it really gives you, and they're obviously updating it all the time. It really gives you an insight into exactly how important reputation is.
Yeah.
Interestingly, when I was working on the talent side of the community, and I really struggle, and I have always struggled with the fact that corporate affairs in larger organizations is very much separate to the marketing department. And I think actually one of the things that's going to happen in the marketing community is that they're going to be very much more joined at the hip.
Exactly.
Because advertising has become a much more important part of the brand presence from a CEO and CFO reputational aspect.
Absolutely.
And because authenticity is so important. So I think, not that I would encourage the corporate affairs directors to have a say over the advertising content, but I think collaboration is going to be much stronger. So I think that is definitely blurring. I also feel that the whole social media side has been, very useful in this period. However, what people are really looking for is authentic facts and news. That's why I think, and going back to my point about Indigenous Irish media, is that I think that's why, well, not just Irish media, but any Indigenous media, where they're really truly authentic. I mean, you take the New York Times and the Washington Post. They are providing you with facts, with long-form journalism that we are eating up, gobbling up at the moment. And God forbid that because advertising spends a cut, that that media suffers, because I think that's hugely important, both politically and for our society.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms, just wrapping up, in terms of Ireland Inc., right? So I know, David Haigh has mentioned a couple of times that, Ireland has some really phenomenal brands, particularly, in the health and the food and the ingredient sectors, right? We know that, right? But one thing he says is that maybe Irish businesses and Ireland Inc. isn't confident enough in promoting the amazing, wholesome stuff we have here. Do you think that?
Well,
do you think there's anything in that, and what can Ireland do?
Well, I mean, look, funnily enough, this Friday we have both Kerry Foods and Jameson and their agencies, Dentsu Aegis and TWA, on another of our behind closed doors seminars. And alongside them, actually, we've got Connolly Partners, who are based in Boston, but they have an agency here. And they're showcasing one of their food brands internationally. Now, Kerry Foods and Jameson are a classic example of, Irish brands who have just got international recognition.
Absolutely.
And that goes without saying. However, other Irish brands, I think, yes, potentially there's a lack of confidence. I mean, our own industry, for instance, one of the opportunities we have is to promote ourselves as a European hub for advertising and marketing. And we are on a strategic plan to promote this. Now, COVID has helped us hugely because it's overcome the barriers of remote working. So if you are a US client and you want to target the European market, you may have felt that it was a risk going to, albeit an English-speaking country like Ireland, who hasn't lived and breathed the brand. But now you've got the ability to work both sides, work remotely with your agency, and use us as a launchpad into Europe. So that program is definitely accelerating. Watch this space, because we're doing on that in September. But I think it is about confidence. So on the one side, hopefully it'll give brand owners confidence to see us as their hub in Europe. But I think also give the agencies the confidence to prove that they've been able to work remotely, albeit with the client 5 miles down the road, because it makes no difference whether they're 5 miles down the road or 2,000 miles away at the moment.
Exactly. No, I agree. And I've always seen Ireland as the Singapore is the tech capital of the Far East. I've seen Ireland, it should be, given that this is the fourth most intangible economy in the world, which is not just about IP and tax, it's about brands, right? I don't, a bit like you said, I think Ireland really should be seen as the brand management jurisdiction for Europe, and so it sounds...
In certain industries, and as you mentioned it, food. And technology. I mean, the proximity, the fact that Google, Facebook, Twitter are all based here and have huge footprint here, we have our intellectual, our IP, I suppose.
Amazing.
Is incredible.
It is.
And I think what the IDA did for the tech sector, when they started, what 30 years ago, maybe 20 years, 25 years ago, we can do for the commercial creativity sector. And I think it's highly possible, particularly because of Brexit as well, because don't forget,
absolutely.
In all of this, we've completely forgotten that Brexit is there. And I mean, unfortunately, those negotiations don't look very positive at the moment. No.
Anyway, let's finish on a positive note.
Yes, let's finish on a positive note.
So wrapping up. So if you mentioned confidence before. So if I ask everybody this at the end, if you were to whisper 2 or 3 words of advice to an aspiring brand manager or somebody within a company or within a brand agency, about what they could really do to prepare themselves to be the best version of themselves, given the way the industry is going to go, what would you whisper to them? What would you say to them?
I think I would start off with their attitude. And I think, keep saying yes, so keep saying yes and keep being brave. And being brave doesn't mean, and saying yes doesn't mean, jumping off a cliff when you know there's no water underneath. It means, you are here. Now is the time for marketeers to stand up and be counted. You are in this role because you are the one with the instincts, the insight, and the science to put your brand on the map. That combination is really powerful. And we've lost our voice in the era of science and number crunching and share value and all those things. But if we can prove now more than anything that by communicating in the right way at the right time, using the right media to our consumers, then that is the proof in the pudding. And I think we're coming out of this, we'll see those brands that have invested and continue to invest will be the winners, and the others will be the losers, quite frankly.
I agree. And I think, you can demonstrate through the work of Brand Finance and other companies that there is a direct link between what you do to your brand or for your brand and the value of that brand, and therefore the value of your business. I think this is going to become more and more obvious. So it's been really wonderful talking with you, Charley. And,
Simon, thank you.
And, your optimism and you're an amazing ambassador for IAPI. It needs that strong, positive, pragmatic, but industry bedded experience which you have. So it's been great chatting with you.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, Simon. Take care.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.